Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back. Thank you for joining me on this Thursday, and I've got a really big update for you in today's video on that weekend storm system, and we've seen some very interesting changes over the past couple of days in the model guidance, and I'm going to break all of that down for you in today's video, including some of those threats that might be increasing while other threats on the bright side are decreasing. So again, throughout the video, I'll kind of talk about all of that and tell you who could potentially be seeing more snow than we originally thought as well, which I think, a lot of people might be kind of surprised by some of these snowfall forecasts that I show you throughout the video. Now, also, I will kind of say here at the beginning, thank you, because the past couple of videos have done really well. That has really helped the channel out a lot. We've gained a lot of new subscribers. We've had a ton of likes, a ton of views, and a ton of people engaging in the comments, letting me know where they're watching from, and, all sorts of things. So really just want to say thank you for all the growth, really over the past 2 weeks now or so. It has been pretty spectacular. So all the kudos to you for that. Now, if you haven't already subscribed, definitely consider joining aboard here on this trip that we have every morning with these videos. And again, that would mean a lot to me. And of course, if you do decide to subscribe, hit that bell for the latest notifications. And of course, like the video and comment. Let me know what you're seeing out there and kind of what you think will happen in your neck of the woods this weekend after we're done kind of analyzing all of these models. I think with that said, though, that should be enough of kind of rambling on here at the beginning. Let's go ahead and get into that forecast. So we'll go ahead and start off with satellite imagery. I am waking up a little later than I normally do this morning, so we are able to kind of use visible satellite compared to just the water vapor loop we've used the past couple mornings. So again, out there we are seeing some cloud cover in sections of the northeast. A lot of this coming off of the Great Lakes. So you know what that means. We're getting some pockets of lake effect snow this morning, including even kind of a bit of a short wave that's made its way into Pennsylvania, leading to a pretty big area of some snowfall this morning. So this wasn't necessarily unexpected, but it's a bit more of a vigorous amount of precipitation and energy than maybe the models had originally thought. We kind of looked at the models yesterday morning, and it looked like this was all going to, not last too far past Erie and Buffalo, but now we're seeing snow as far south and east as Philadelphia this morning. So very interesting stuff out up that way. Now, outside of there, pretty clear conditions for most folks in the southeast, the Ohio River Valley, maybe some clouds out there, but overall, it's just been a very cold morning for a lot of folks up and down the eastern half of the country. Now, taking a look at some of this radar imagery as well as those watches, warnings, and advisories that we're dealing with out there. Again, this is that kind of blob of some snowfall we're seeing this morning through, again, much of Pennsylvania, through upstate New York, and even kind of down as far south and east as Delaware, getting some snow or maybe a little bit of rain in there as well. But most of the reports I've seen this morning has most of this falling as some snowfall through much of the Northeast. Now, again, it's not everyone in the Northeast, but a good chunk of Pennsylvania back here through New Jersey getting some of that as well. And we even have some kind of special weather statements up for a little bit of this snow potentially able to kind of make a couple slick spots on the roads. The good news is that we'll warm up above freezing this afternoon. So this is more of, kind of festive flakes and just kind of a cool surprise compared to really seeing much of any impacts outside of people kind of, sometimes they freak out when they see snowfall. But outside of that, nothing too crazy there. Now, looking back kind of out west and other halves of the country, this is kind of where everything's beginning to get its act together for this weekend storm system. We've been seeing a ton of precipitation and energy flying into the Pacific Northwest really the past week or so, and this is finally going to kind of consolidate a little bit here, and that is what is going to lead to this big kind of front that moves east across the country going through this weekend, bringing with it all sorts of different weather. And because of that, we actually already do have some wind advisories out for sections of Oklahoma, southeastern Kansas, southwestern Missouri, expecting some stronger winds over the next couple of days. And I do expect those wind advisories will likely be expanded to other areas of the country as we go through the next couple of days. Alrighty, so that's kind of what we're seeing out there right now. Let's take a look now at future radar through about the next 48 hours or so. And this model, right off the press, just got done running, so we'll go ahead and take a look at this one together. So, again, it's still showing some of that snow up here into the northeast, but it's still kind of underdoing it a little bit. So that's kind of interesting, and the models, again, have been underdoing the system as a whole. So I would imagine that this snowfall lasts a little bit longer than maybe this model is projecting, probably the next couple of hours. before eventually kind of tapering off this afternoon as we warm back up above freezing and that moisture kind of dries up a little bit. Now going into tonight, again, still things should clear out. They should be much nicer. Can't rule out a couple leftover lake effect snow showers through the northeast, but really nothing to write home about. Now going into tomorrow, that's when things will kind of get interesting again. So this is whenever our low pressure at the surface is going to begin to form going into tomorrow afternoon, and this will also likely lead to some severe weather, but more importantly, just kind of some good old-fashioned rainfall throughout the day tomorrow for some folks. Now, bringing this into really tomorrow evening is whenever things should pick up. We have this low pressure again beginning to develop right over Missouri. This could lead to some strong storms, also some strong wind likely, but this low pressure isn't actually the main low pressure that's going to be associated with our front this weekend. This guy is actually going to kind of fly off up towards the Great Lakes going into overnight Friday. And that, is kind of a little different than what we originally had thought for you folks in the Great Lakes. A couple days ago, it looked like maybe a massive snowstorm was coming. Now, you could really honestly just be dealing with some gusty winds and some overnight rainfall going from Friday night into Saturday. And in that same time frame is when we'll also likely see rain begin to kind of break out for a wider area of the country. Right now, this is showing you early Saturday morning. Again, a big chunk of the country here dealing with some rain beginning to kind of form ahead of that main front that is still back out towards the Great Plains. We will definitely be watching that and kind of see how that unfolds. But right now, it looks like precipitation will begin with this front as early as Friday, and into overnight Friday into our early Saturday before then going into Sundays when things really kind of crank up for more folks along the eastern seaboard. So that's as far out as this model goes, and we'll definitely keep tabs on that. Another thing I will note is it has definitely been a very cold morning, and that will likely continue through this afternoon, but we will also begin to slowly get back to average for a lot of people this afternoon, and especially going into tomorrow. So this afternoon's temperatures on your map here, again, still pockets of below average temperatures, especially up kind of into the northeast and back really right along the I-95 corridor all the way down into the southeastern coastline. But going throughout the day, things will warm up much nicer, and going into this evening and especially especially afternoon Friday, into overnight Friday, into Saturday afternoon, a big area of above average temperatures as this front combined with high pressure kind of off the coast really crank up together this very strong southerly flow ahead of that cold front. And that's going to lead to very warm temperatures, very muggy air likely as well, and that will help to kind of fuel some severe storms as we go into our weekend. Okay, so that's kind of the next couple of days looking at radar. Now let's kind of dive into this storm system that we've been talking about for about a week now. And again, we've seen some very interesting changes in the model guidance. Now, if you've been watching the past couple of videos, you'll know I won't shut up about this negatively tilted, neutrally tilted trough thing. And again, that's for a very important reason. And the latest models continue to kind of delay that tilt. So now we're looking at a little bit less of one dynamic storm system and just kind of a front with multiple storm systems that kind of ride up along it. Now, that has good news and bad news. The good news is the wind threat will likely be lower. The severe weather threat will likely be a little bit lower. The maybe not as great news or good news, depending on what kind of fan you are of what type of weather. But I think more folks are going to get in on some snowfall because of that. Now, originally, snowfall was going to be kind of a quick hitting burst. Now, this front looks more like an antifront, meaning half of it is rain and the other half is snow. So kind of showing you that here in our 500 millibar height anomaly. Again, you'll notice going into Sunday afternoon, this trough is still positively tilted. A couple days ago, it looked like it was going to be negatively tilted as far west as Texas and Oklahoma. Now, it's staying pretty positively tilted through much of its life cycle before finally kind of crossing the Appalachia chain. Then it finally kind of gains that negative tilt. But what this is really going to do for a lot of folks, this front is going to kind of just drape across much of the country, and it's going to lead to multiple areas of low pressure kind of forming along it and riding up it. And that's going to allow enough moisture to be thrown back on the cold side of this front, leading to some very impressive, pockets of very wet snow on one side of the front, while the other side, again, still dealing with some severe weather, some strong winds as well. Okay, so to kind of show you this in another map, that map was our vorticity map. This map is going to be probably a little easier to understand. The blue is just low pressure, the red is high pressure. So moving this into this weekend, again, you'll notice this is that front, pretty easy to spot. Look at this big area of blue that kind of forms and starts tracking eastbound throughout this weekend. And again, timestamp is going to be up here at the top of your screen. Just kind of pay attention to the day there. So this is Friday afternoon. Again, that front beginning to kind of form, and that's going to allow some precipitation to form, as we had talked about. That begins to kind of continue to track east, and again, there's that first piece of low pressure. We're already seeing areas of low pressure develop along the front and kind of fly through. That's the one that we just looked at on our short range model. But it's really going into overnight Saturday here and into early Sunday that I think we're going to get a more vigorous area of low pressure to develop somewhere in the southeast and ride up kind of, this front as it's continuing to push east. Latest European model, again, you'll see all those low pressures form there. And that is going to allow a lot of this blue to ride up and down the eastern seaboard, and could be some strong low pressure. And you'll notice the placement on a lot of our Euro ensemble members are right here along the I-95 corridor. So that leaves a lot of room on the back side of this for some snow. And another thing I'll mention here in a second is the trend on this has been further and further east. And I'll show you that trend here in just a moment. Now, taking a look at the same map for the GFS here, again, here's that front going into Saturday morning and afternoon, continuing to push eastbound, and sure enough, here's all those pieces of low pressure developing right along it through the southeast, riding up into the northeast, and again, that will be conducive for some backside snow here as that moisture wraps around with that cold air. And then eventually all those low pressures, I should add, do kind of move out, and we have high pressure and cooler temperatures move in by the time we get into Monday evening and especially into next Tuesday. Now, again, I was talking about the trend here. Again, a couple days ago, we saw, the chance for some big-time snow through the Midwest, through the Great Lakes region, and that was when you see all of these blues kind of clustered over here. But watch what happens over time. All of our models are shifting this area of low pressure further off to the south and east, and that tells me generally, in meteorology, the trend is your friend. And if this is the trend, likely that band of snow will also continue to shift east. So, there's a potential that maybe some folks relatively not too far inland in the northeast and the mid-Atlantic could see some flakes fly out of this storm system. And some folks, potentially even some pretty big impacts out of those flakes, including some pretty heavy accumulations. And we'll take a look at those maps here in just a moment as well. Now, showing you kind of future radar with this storm system, we'll start with the European model as we normally do here. Again, here's that first piece of energy kind of flying up. We took a look at that on the short range model. That one could bring some gusty winds through Wisconsin, Michigan, kind of the Chicago area with some rain and snow depending on where exactly you are in that region. But it's after that that this front really begins to throw a lot more precipitation up ahead going into the early morning hours of Sunday here. You'll notice a lot of people waking up to some rain through the southeast, mid-Atlantic, northeast, maybe even some rumbles of thunder, especially the further south you are on this map here. But again, going into kind of Sunday afternoon, you'll notice here comes that low pressure beginning to develop. And one thing I do want to know is look at the placement of this low. It's kind of up here into central Pennsylvania. If we look back at the European ensemble members and we look at their low placements here, this one, the deterministic run is quite far off to the west compared to most of its other members. Most of the members have that low right kind of along the Jersey Shore into sections of Long Island. So even the operational model here is still kind of playing catch up a little bit with its ensembles. So again, a lot of this snow that you see could shift even further east on this map. Now, the European model, kind of hard to tell here, but it's a little less robust than the GFS model on that snow. But nonetheless here, still from the Appalachian chain up through sections of the interior northeast, getting a big burst of snow on the back side of this overnight Sunday, and also could still be dealing with some strong winds and heavy rain in front of this front. So again, it's going to be a two-tone story here. One is going to be cold, snowy, windy. The other is going to be maybe not warm, but warmer, rainy, and windy. So again, going into overnight, look at this very fine line setting up through the northeast, mid-Atlantic, even bringing some wintry precipitation as far east here as Washington, D.C., Baltimore, back towards Harrisburg, into upstate New York, seeing some of that wintry weather on the backside of this storm system as this low continues to crank up and move up the coastline going into Our afternoon Monday, still seeing some snow on the backside there before things finally clear out going into overnight Monday and into Tuesday. Now, that's the European model. Let's take a look at the GFS model, which is even more robust on kind of this snowy side of the storm. So again, same general start here for our Friday. Here's that first kind of piece of energy that flies up really quickly through the Great Lakes region. And then going into Saturday afternoon, more of a widespread rain shield develops. And here comes some of those low pressures once again forming right along the front and will likely ride up the coast with the front. So going through Sunday afternoon, again, I think we definitely will have a severe weather threat through sections of the southeast, maybe even mid-Atlantic, potentially down here into the eastern Carolinas, the Florida Panhandle, having the best shot at that severe weather during those days. But I think Saturday will be a bigger severe weather day back towards Louisiana, Mississippi, and Arkansas and kind of surrounding areas. Now, moving this ahead in time, Sunday afternoon into Sunday evening, again, the GFS showing that same scenario, a fine line here with very heavy rain on one side and very heavy wet snow on the other. So, again, it's going to be a sharp cutoff. Some folks, it's going to be 34, 35 degrees and pouring rain, while other places it's going to be 32, 33 and just puke and snow. So, again, as we get closer, we'll be able to kind of fine-tune who exactly sees what, but the models are becoming a lot more aligned that there will be this very sharp cutoff, and I'm feeling pretty confident in that as well. GFS then continues again to crank up this low, getting it into pretty strong territory throughout New England overnight Sunday into early Monday, and again really cranks this guy up going into the northeast, and then funnels in that cold, drier air behind it going into our Tuesday. All right, so a couple more winter weather maps I'm going to show you here before we change directions and talk about some severe weather and wind gusts. We'll start by showing our Euro ensemble members' chance of at least an inch of snow falling with this storm system. And you'll notice as we move this ahead, going into overnight Sunday into Monday, there's a big area of the northeast all the way back towards the Ohio River Valley and into the Appalachia chain from North Carolina northbound that could get, a good thumping of snow out of this. So the operational run didn't necessarily show this super well, but the ensemble members, again, showing a big area that is likely going to see at least some flakes fly as far east there as much of Ohio and as far south as the mountains of North Carolina and potentially even the kind of foothills there of Tennessee into the Tri-Cities area of Tennessee. And again, all of this continues to move up the coast throughout the overnight Sunday into afternoon Monday and even into Monday evening, seeing pretty good shot at some snow accumulating there through much of the northeast. So a lot of people kind of getting in on the potential for some of this snow to fall. And our GFS ensemble members, even kind of more bullish on this, you'll notice they have chances of snow really kind of even into central Tennessee, again through much of eastern Ohio and up the east coast from, again, the mountains of North Carolina, especially up into the mountains of Virginia, into much of Pennsylvania, New York State, and even into a good chunk of the northeast here having a chance of some accumulating snowfall out of this storm system. Now, I'm sure the million-dollar question you're asking is, well, how much snow exactly? Well, I'll show you the blend of all of the ensemble members. We'll start with the Euro members. Down here kind of from the North Carolina mountains, maybe 1 to 3 inches, but once you get up into the interior northeast, we could get half a foot to a foot of snowfall through sections of upstate New York, Vermont, New Hampshire, maybe even sections of Maine. Now, again, this is just the Euro ensemble members. If we look at the GFS ensemble members, even more bullish on that snowfall. It paints a very wintry scene through much of the southeastern United States mountains, even into sections of the I-95 corridor here. A place like Baltimore, Washington, D.C., potentially could see, a couple inches of snow in a scenario like this. And I really don't think this map is that far-fetched. Again, we've seen this trend further and further east over the past couple of days, and like I said earlier, the trend is your friend. If we continue to see this, it is not out of the question a place like Baltimore or Washington, D.C., maybe even Philadelphia, New York City, through much of Connecticut, potentially Boston. A lot of these I-95 corridor cities could see some snowfall. I'm not saying it's going to be a blockbuster storm, but as quiet as it's been in this part of the country, anything, could, make some people very excited in this part of the country. So, again, watching that. And also a place like, eastern Tennessee, maybe some snowfall there, even outside of the mountains. All depends on where the low pressure forms, how quickly that cold air can catch up. And I will say, generally, this kind of area of eastern Tennessee, the foothills of Kentucky and eastern Ohio, they normally luck out pretty good in these events. So I would not be surprised, again, to maybe see some flakes fly in those areas, and it could even potentially accumulate from a dusting to maybe even upwards of a couple of inches in some places. Now, that's the snowfall with this storm system. Obviously, the severe weather is also a very big factor that we have to be cautious of. And as early as tomorrow, we do have the chance for some strong storms here through much of Arkansas, into southeastern Oklahoma, and into northwestern Texas. Or excuse me, northeastern Texas. They're kind of through the Texarkana area. Biggest threat here would be some strong straight line winds. Can't rule out a brief kind of noodle tornado, if you will. But I really think straight line winds and maybe some hail will be the bigger threats on our Friday. Now, going into Saturday could be a bit of a different story here. We've got a big slight risk through much of East Texas, about the entire state of Louisiana under the gun, just about the entire state of Mississippi, much of southeastern Arkansas, and even the Memphis area could see some strong storms for our Saturday. Again, the biggest threats here will be straight line winds, however, cannot rule out a couple tornadoes as well as maybe a little bit of hail, but I think really the biggest threat Saturday will be strong straight line winds and some isolated tornadoes. All right, one more map I will show you before I kind of let you go here is these, are these wind gusts that are projected. And again, we've been talking about this threat a lot recently. The good news, I think this threat is kind of getting a little bit lower for most people now. Some people still going to see very gusty conditions. And again, starting this out even as early as tomorrow afternoon, you'll see this is that kind of pocket of wind with that first disturbance that could kind of fly up through the Midwest. So if you're in the Great Lakes region tomorrow, even from St. Louis back towards Chicago, Indianapolis, tomorrow evening could get gusty as this moves on through with some of those rain bands moving through as well. Now, it's really going into our Saturday afternoon, evening, and especially Sunday that as this front continues to push east and low pressure really forms, that's when the winds are really going to pick up. So Sunday afternoon here, gusty through the southeast, but really the mid-Atlantic and northeast is where the most of this wind is going to pick up during the afternoon hours of Sunday and into the overnight hours of Sunday. You'll notice here winds gusting quite strongly, especially in the northeast is the place I'm still the most concerned about these gusty winds, particularly the kind of coastal regions here where we could get very strong tropical storm strength gusts. Can't rule out a couple of places getting into hurricane force winds, at least gusting up to that, but overall, the wind threat has come down slightly, but still there. Going from 75 mile an hour gusts to 60, 65 mile an hour gusts, definitely again better. However, still problematic as we continue to move ahead into this weekend with this storm system forming. Alrighty, so again, some impressive changes over the past couple of days in the models, including the chance of maybe some snow chances upticking through parts of the East Coast that haven't really seen all that much snow the past couple of years, let alone this year. So we'll definitely watch out for that. And again, still watching that severe weather threat and so on and so forth. Now, for tomorrow's video, it might be out a little bit later. Just to let you know, I have an exam at 8 o'clock tomorrow morning and then another exam at 5 o'clock tomorrow night. So I'm going to try my best to squeeze a video in there. Hopefully I can get back here into my kind of recording area by the time noon rolls around, so you still have something to watch tomorrow. But just be aware that video likely will be out a little bit later than the past couple have. And then hopefully going into this weekend, we can get back on track and really break down the storm as it's happening and leading right up to it. With that said, though, again, I hope you have a great rest of your Thursday out there, and I'll see you all tomorrow.